Very much so.
Jai Shriman Narayana.
Jai
Here we
Shriman
are,
Narayana.
and let's see if it's recording. It's recording, so let's go back. So today
Great.
we continue with the chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
We
Yes.
were discussing with the study guide that unfortunately I didn't have the time to translate, to publish the English edition yet. But okay. So the Dhyana Yoga, Krishna explains exactly what what is the meaning of yoga, and also in a practical manner. So from verse 10 to 17, Krishna explains the preliminaries, so the lifestyle and how to organize, how to sit down for meditation and everything. And from 18 to 32, he's going to explain exactly what is the meditation. So we go here.
Yes, and before we start, Mataji, what was, and I had a question initially based on reflecting on the first 17 verses. There was a very elaborate description on deer skin, going to a secluded place, etc. My question to you, Mataji, is that do we utilize this literally when we practice here in the 21st century, or is Krishna outlining the key principles, which is make sure the place is quiet, make sure it's undisturbed? You know what I'm saying here, Mataji, is are these basic principles for us to follow, or do we have to? Because people will say, "Oh, does that mean that I have to use deer skin? Does that mean I have to do this or that? Or are these general principles that we have to follow?"
Yeah, they are actually principles, and the principles need to be applied according to place, time, and circumstance. As usual, whatever practices we do, we can do according to time, place, and situation, and we can even do mentally, which has the same effect, same result than doing things physically. Now, of course, we need to concentrate, to focus. Now, as you said, the important principle is to find, to choose a place that is comfortable enough, but not too comfortable. Because otherwise we go to sleep. Which is clean enough, it's as clean as possible, pure as possible, without disturbances, so that we can actually focus our attention without being distracted. Now, of course, if you live in a city, there will always be some noise in the street or whatever. Then in that case, we don't need to go to the forest. Even in the forest, you're not guaranteed to have a very quiet place. But, we can choose a better time. Like, for example, as we were mentioning about the pranayama, there are 3 moments in the day, actually 4, but 3 are more important, that are called sandhi, which means the junction between the day and the night. Now, the dawn or sunrise is one. Then we have midday, which is a junction between the first part of the day, second part of the day. The dawn, of course, is a junction between the night and the day. Then we have the sunset, that is a junction between the day and the night. And then the fourth junction, the fourth sandhi, is in the middle of the night. but that is usually a time when we sleep. And during the Sandhi, the Orthodox Brahmanas usually chant the Gayatri mantra. So the Gayatri mantra is a meditation on Surya. So we should do it when the sun is visible, not in the middle of the night.
But you can't meditate on the Gayatri mantra after dark. Is that right, Mataji?
This doesn't make much sense. Doesn't make much sense. But these three or four particular moments in the day, apart from the Gayatri mantra, our body is feeling the change of energy on the planet, the change of the tides. And that is also influencing our physical body and our mind. And specifically,
And Mataji, just before you talk about that, I just want to ask you on one point that you said. You mentioned the dawn. Are you referring to the Brahma Muhurta?
The Brahma Muhurta is a bit longer than the dawn itself. It's around the dawn, around the sunrise. And I think that the Muhurta is 2 hours, last 2 hours.
Yeah, an hour and a half, 2 hours.
An hour and a half, something like that. So it starts about 1 hour or, like 45 minutes before sunrise, and ends about, the same time, the same period after sunrise. Brahma Muhurta is not, if the sunrise is at 7:30 in the morning, Brahma Muhurta is not 4 o'clock. It's not 3 o'clock, 3 a.m. That's still night. Okay, which is not so bad, but it's not the Brahma Muhurta.
Understood. Can I ask you though, for those of us who want to wake up at the Brahma Muhurta time, you mentioned Gayatri mantra. It's not strictly sunrise yet. Would it be okay to meditate on the Gayatri mantra?
Because we are calling on Surya. But usually when we wake up and get up at the Brahma Muhurta, it takes some time to do all the morning duties, like taking shower and everything. So, the Gayatri pretty much coincides, the time for chanting the Gayatri pretty much coincides with the sunrise.
And Mataji, excellent. I mean, that's really, really clear. Can I ask you, just for your listeners, to explain the relationship between Surya and Narayana? Because there's lots of discussion about this in Vaishnava circles, and there is also confusion, as you well know. What's the relationship between Surya and Narayana? How should we understand that, Mataji?
The Gayatri mantra explains that Surya, Savita, is the radiance of Narayana. Devasya Dhimahi. Devasya Bhargo. Devasya. This Deva could be both Vishnu or Surya himself. But we know that Surya is the radiance of Vishnu. When Krishna in Gita says, I am the radiance of the sun and the moon. So when we meditate on Surya, we meditate on the radiance of that we see as the radiance of God. But here the question can go much deeper, because we need to understand what is the meaning of Brahman, Parabrahman, and Atman. The dualistic mentality tends to separate the Atman from Brahman and so much more from Bhagavan. And there are many people who actually boast about this dualistic Siddhanta, what I call it. But the dualistic doctrine is not what Krishna teaches in Bhagavad Gita. And those who think that it's a Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, that's not even what Chaitanya taught. In fact, they also know that the philosophy attributed to Chaitanya is not Dvaita, but is Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. So Dvaita is material illusion, is illusion anyway. It's not Tattva. Duality is not Tattva, it's Maya. Whether it is Mahamaya or Yogamaya, okay, we can discuss about that. Because if you feel separated from God in Bhakti, in the Vipralamba Rasa, okay, but that's still illusion. Now, the problem is that in the Abrahamic and post-Abrahamic mentality, there is a very, sharp distinction between the human being and God. And the idea that people get about God is that God, Bhagavan, Ishvara, is one entity that is separated, distinct from everything else. And that's the meaning that they give to the word transcendental. Transcendental, they mean it, they think that the meaning of transcendental means beyond this material world. But that's not the Vedic idea. That's not the idea of Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am everywhere. Everything rests on me.
Vasudeva Sarvamiti.
Yes. So if we postulate that Vasudeva is not in this world, we have a problem. That is the basic.
That's why. Yeah. That's why, Mataji, I would argue. Correct me if wrong. Is that really Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, is the only true monotheistic religion?
Exactly. I totally agree. Yeah. Because a so-called monotheistic religion that doesn't understand the meaning of omnipresent, it's not really monotheistic. So basically, everything is part of God. God is present everywhere. But what is God? God is Satchidananda. God is existence, is consciousness, right? Jnana. When the Bhagavad Purana said, Tattvam Jnanam Advayam, Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan, iti shabdyate. Badanti tat tattva vidas, Tattvam Jnanam Advayam.
And also the Mundakya Upanishad says, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, isn't it?
Exactly. So that is the point. The point is that God is knowledge. God is consciousness. God is awareness. That is a characteristic of the Purusha. And the Supreme Purusha is still a Purusha. So the characteristic is consciousness. So this consciousness is called non-manifested avyakta, when it's not manifested. Then when it manifests through Yoga Maya, through the internal energy, when Krishna says, Shrijamyaham, Tadatmanam Shrijamyaham, then God manifests itself through the internal energy. But every manifestation appears to have a beginning and an end. That's why people are confused and they think that these manifestations are material, because they have a beginning and an end. But that's not a fact, because the consciousness can manifest everything at the same time. Like Krishna showed Arjuna in the chapters 10 and 11 with the Virat Rupa Darshan. So Surya is Krishna. Surya is Vishnu.
Wonderful.
In the sense that Surya is a manifestation of the divine consciousness that is not necessarily the Supreme Brahman, but also the Atman is Vishnu. It's a part of Vishnu. How can you separate anything from the complete whole? Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam. You cannot separate.
So Surya is effectively the radiance of Vishnu, and effectively that's the correct understanding of Surya's relationship to Narayana.
And it is also, Surya is also the radiance of Shiva. Now, in Puri, there is this very interesting tradition of the Pancha Pandavas. There are 5 major temples of Shiva in Jagannath Puri, and each one is identified with one of the Pandavas. And there is a 6th Pandava, which is the hidden one, which is Karna. And Karna personifies the destructive aspect of Surya, the destructive aspect of Shiva, Martanda. In fact, there are prayers to Shiva that address him as Mahamartanda Rupena. Mahamartanda. Martanda is that aspect of Surya that is destructive, that is killing, burning, destroying. And that's also the aspect of Shiva as Rudra, and it's also the aspect of Vishnu in the form of Kala, time, as we see again in Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna...
That's really, really insightful, because again, I think what I'm learning from this discussion so far is the fact that there are obviously good times where we can meditate.
Better times. But in the end of the story, any time is a good time. The better times, physically speaking, as I was saying before, so the pranayama practice is basically to help us calm down the prana, so that the prana is not agitated, the mind is not agitated. So there are these 4 moments when the tides are changing, and the sun and the moon are balanced. So the Ida and Pingala are balanced. Our left hemisphere and right hemisphere of the brain are balanced. And we can see that. It's a very easy way to verify that at that time, we naturally breathe through both nostrils simultaneously. And we can verify very easily. We just put an index finger under our nose, under the nostrils. So we can find out where the air is coming and going. And it's actually extremely interesting because it shows us how our human body is so depending on the natural cycles, so depending on the planets, so depending on the position of the earth. We cannot do without nature. So the best, tell.
And the other thing that's really striking from your discussion is that so far is that it's perfectly reasonable to meditate on the Gayatri mantra, because that's something that a lot of people know and are attached to. So a mantra that isn't always, you can meditate on the Gayatri mantra and gain significant advancement. Is that right?
Of course. Gayatri mantra is the basic mantra of all the Vedas. The mother of the Vedas, Gayatri mantra. It's not, some mechanical, superficial, ritualistic, stuff that we don't actually need. It's important. Gayatri mantra is very important. Okay, so going back,
yes.
All the practice of pranayama is meant to help us balance both the hemispheres of the brain, both the left and right energies of the body, so both the Ida and Pingala. So in that way, we are able to breathe simultaneously from both nostrils all the time. And that is what Krishna was explaining in chapter 3, that the yogis are performing the yagya by sacrificing the prana into the apana. So the practice of pranayama is the stillness of the energy that happens when there is no differential of charge, electric charge, we can say, between the two energies in our body. There is the positive and negative polarities are in perfect balance. So they calm each other, they merge. So they are sacrificed into each other. They become sacred in their union. You follow?
Yes, absolutely. And it kind of relates to Shri Krishna saying in these first 16, 17 verses about eating too little, sleeping too little, eating too much, sleeping too much. He emphasizes the need for balance, isn't it, Mataji?
Exactly. Balance is very important. And the funny thing is, balance is not static, it's dynamic. Balance, tends to stillness. But in order to remain still, we need to continue adjusting. We need to control the energy in order to adjust it. Otherwise, the tendency of the material nature, which includes the material energy, is to change, to move. In order to keep the energy still, we need to constantly act on it. That's why Krishna is saying, guna guneshu vartante. The gunas must be engaged in the gunas. There are so many layers of meanings in Gita that it's wow.
Yes.
I remember when I was a small child. In my room there was a wardrobe with two mirrors, two long mirrors, one on each door, internal doors. So I used to open the two doors and have the feeling of infinity. You know, because you see there is no end. You know, it's like
Yes.
when you have when you're sharing the screen here, you know, the infinity screen. You know, because there is, there is no end to the number of layers.
Exactly.
You see, so many, you go into each, and it's not the last one, because within that frame there is, the entire frame, and contains also, another level of frames.
And I think that takes us nicely to I think we'd gone to, is it chapter 17 or verse 17 we'd gone to, Mataji?
Yeah, we got 18. Yeah.
Yes,
so
very good.
We go on. When the consciousness is trained to focus firmly on the Atman, free from the desire for the various types of sense pleasures, it is said to be properly engaged in yoga. So, free from the desire means we just focus on the Atman. To focus on the Atman, we have to overcome the identification and attachment to the physical material, body and objects, of course. Then, this is the explanation of the Brahma Nirvana, the Parama Nirvana, Nirvana Parama. Just like the flame of a lamp remains stable when there is no wind, the control mind of the yogi does not flicker. This is a comparison given for one who is engaged in the meditation on the Atman. So, Nivata sto. Nirvana, Nivata is practically the same. Now, the problem is that many people, confuse the idea of Nirvana because of the Buddhist concept of nothingness. So they think that Nirvana is bad because there is the extinction. It means extinguishing the consciousness, because nothing is there. Buddha didn't speak about the Atman and Bhagavad and Brahman, but he never denied them. Unfortunately, some of the followers of the Buddha equivocated on that. So they denied the existence of the Atman, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan.
So what you're saying here, Mataji, is that Nirvana is commonly linked to the term nothingness. But in fact, that's not the case. What it means is almost windless, undisturbed,
exactly,
as opposed to nothingness.
Yeah. Yes. So we can make a very simple, very practical example, by using this lamp, the flame of a lamp. Without wind or without air, in the yoga perspective, is that the flame of the lamp is burning more brightly because it doesn't flicker. The Buddhist idea, the idea of these people who, claim to be Buddhist, is that you take away the air from the lamp. Like you take a glass and you cover the lamp, so there is no more air, there's no more oxygen. So the flame of the lamp goes off, goes out. This is the idea of nirvana. There is no air, so the flame goes out. But this is not what nirvana originally meant.
Yes.
So, here. Another famous example is the crystal clear water of a small lake or pond. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra also defined this blissful and enlightened state in the first verses of the Samadhi Pada. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations in the mind. And Tada Drashtu Swarupe Avasthanam. Then the seer is established in his real form or nature. Swarup. Again, the purpose of yoga is highlighted here as a pure and firm contemplation of the Supreme Self as transcendental reality through a controlled mind. Okay, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Here, some people believe that Nirvikalpa Samadhi means that one should meditate on a void. This is incorrect. There is no point in meditating on a void, especially considering the void does not exist by definition. There is not a single spot in the entire universe or in the spiritual world where we can find a void. We can find ethereal space, we can find planetary space, antariksha, but there is no void. By definition, a void is something that does not exist, the absence of all existence. It is impossible to meditate on nothingness. This misconception of void meditation derives from half-baked and badly digested concept of Brahman that is described as devoid of material qualities. Naturally, a person who can only think in terms of material existence will conclude that something without material qualities simply does not exist, and therefore it is a void. But this is not confirmed in any scripture. Rather, Brahman is a supreme existence, the source of all existences and qualities, characterized by perfect sat, eternity, chit, consciousness, and ananda, happiness. How can something like that be a void? Okay. So, now, therefore, the traditional scriptures state that only a Brahmana, one who actually knows Brahman, Brahmana Brahma Janati, is qualified and authorized to teach and guide others on the path of yoga and spiritual realization. Ta-da! Okay. 20. When the consciousness becomes quiet because of the cessation of the wavering by the engagement or service in yoga, then one becomes satisfied in the self by contemplating the Atman within the self, the Param
Okay,
Atman.
So Mataji, a couple of questions, again, on a crude level, but I think your listeners will appreciate it. The first is that action in detachment leads to a increasing predisposition to recognizing the self. I think that's important. The second point, Mataji, is that and again, this is going to sound really crude, but that's the way it is. If you spend those periods, 10 minutes, at those critical periods that you mentioned in the day, sunrise, etc., chanting the Gayatri mantra, how powerful is that in this process?
Well, the Gayatri mantra is not a particular yoga practice in the sense that it's something that is more like a daily duty to begin to put your mind into the proper state of consciousness to go through the rest of the day. But that is also yoga meditation, yes, of course. But you meditate on the Surya. You don't, if you meditate on the Paramatman, you look inside. When you meditate on the Gayatri mantra, you look outside. You see the difference?
Yes.
So, again, there is not so much difference because Bahir Nishingo, Hridaye Nishingo. Okay, Sarvatomukha. The face of the Brahman is everywhere. Is inside and outside, there is no difference. That is the meaning of omnipresent. So the meditation on the Gayatri mantra can be actually your 10 minutes yoga meditation, which is okay. It's okay. But it's you're not contemplating Savita as the Atman of the Atman, of yourself. You see the difference?
Yes.
So the purpose of the yoga in general is to meditate on the self of the self. how, like Krishna is saying here, one becomes satisfied in the self by contemplating the Atman within the self. Now, you can also contemplate the Atman within the Surya, which is the Viratupa. But it's not exactly the same. I don't know. Is that clear?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Good. Yeah, because it's a bit it may sound a contradictory, but it's
Okay,
not.
Mataji,
Yeah.
again, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot.
Okay.
Let's say if you were the average like neophyte coming into this, I mean, a lot of people who listen to you will be just starting on their journey, coming from perhaps a place where there's a lot of material conditioning, and not only that, Abrahamic projections, etc.
Okay.
Would you? I mean, obviously, I think that the idea of action and detachment is important. The idea of study of the Bhagavad Gita, Kirtana, is also important. How much emphasis, Mataji, would you put on them to spend 10 minutes at those critical periods chanting a mantra?
Well, it depends on which mantra you chant. If
But,
you
but
chant,
I mean, Mataji, most people won't have that degree of insight coming into this. They're going to say, is there a mantra that I can chant? Or they'll know the Gayatri mantra. This is just the average person who may not have that much knowledge. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, actually, the first and most, practical, easiest is any Maha mantra. A Maha mantra is different from other categories of mantras in that it is composed only or almost solely by names of God, by names of Bhagavan. So one very famous Maha mantra is the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's a long one. So I have seen many people are not even able to memorize that. So they get all messed up with the Ram, Krishna, Ram, Boo. I don't know what I'm saying. So easier than that is the Panchakshara mantra, is the Om Namah Shivaya. That's much easier. So
Understood.
Is also, the mantra by which we connect with the Guru Tattva, which is added bonus. Okay. And then we have other Maha mantras, which were, are quite famous, is like Om Vishnave Namaha, which is also very easy and short. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which is also good. Om Namo Narayanaya is also short and easy. So these are all Maha mantras. Now, the Gayatri is not a Maha mantra. It's a particular type of mantra. It's in its own category. In fact, lots of people have created a different Gayatri mantras that are not addressing Savita. They're addressing various manifestations of God. Like, for example, the Gayatri mantra for Shiva is Om Tat Purushaya Vidmahe, Maharudraya Dhimahi, Mahadevaya Dhimahi, Rudraya Dhimahi, Mahadevaya Dhimahi, Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. This is the Shiva Gayatri.
Sure.
But the original Gayatri is for Savita. So similarly, we have other Gayatri mantras for different, personalities of God, but That's a whole category. Gayatri mantras are a category in themselves. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. Master, please carry on.
Okay, so yeah, contemplating the Atman within the self. Then we go. 21. In this absolute state of happiness that can be grasped by the intellect, but is beyond the reach of the senses, one certainly knows that he is firmly situated in the truth and does not move away. So again, this is balance and stillness. Firmly established stillness, which is not tamas, it's not inertness, but it's balance and control. And with balance and control, we can actually penetrate deeper into our consciousness. It's like when you use a how you call it, a scalpel, you know. If you are a surgeon, you use a scalpel. You know, you need to be still and firm. Otherwise, you're going to make a mess. You can understand that. You know, even if you want to cut the vegetables, you know, you don't need to cut into the flesh of a patient. You know, if you are not firm and stable and balanced, it's not good. So, in the same way, you know, like Krishna says when talking about the great banyan tree of the material manifestation, you know, and say with the sword of knowledge one should cut the root. You know, go and cut into the root of the consciousness, not in the sense of cutting it away, but cutting through, going deeper into the root. You understand? So this is when we go deep enough into the actual consciousness, we find, again, like in the Upanishads, they're saying that we have the Jagruti and the Swapna, Susupti, and the Turiya. These are sequentially deeper states of the consciousness. So we need to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and finally we get to the Turiya. We get to the actual Brahman, Brahma-bhuta realization, which is perfection, Satchidananda, existence, awareness. Even if the awareness does not manifest externally, it's still there, you know, and happiness. Okay, so this is the idea. Okay, so firmly situated in truth and does not move away. Tell. You wanted to say something?
No, please.
Okay. 22. One who has obtained this position does not take into consideration or not feel the need for any further acquisition. And once established there, he does not become shaken even by severe sufferings. This is satisfaction. This is peace and happiness. So we can answer Mike Jagger of the Rolling Stones, who cannot get he can get no satisfaction. Yeah, that's why, you know, he cannot get satisfaction. Here there is a satisfaction. Okay. The verse in this regard about you know, how Krishna has explained this perfect state of happiness and contentment in the self, while speaking about himself and the self-realized soul in general. So in verse 322, Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavabham avaptavyam varta eva chakarmani. Osana Prita, in all the three words, there is nothing that I need to do or that I want to obtain. Yet I also engage in activities. So that doesn't mean when we achieve this position of balance, stillness, firmness, balance and happiness, the fact that we don't have any need or desire for anything else doesn't mean that we stop working. Because we need to follow the example of Krishna. Yet I also engage in activities. So there is no need to perform any action, and still we perform our duty in the best possible way, because we know.
Because Krishna, because Krishna says that I am even working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Krishna also says that one should be detached both from action and from inaction. Means, being attached to not working is also an attachment. It's also a material attachment.
Yes.
So we shouldn't be attached to, avoiding work. Okay. So
that's quite a pertinent given the state of Western Europe at the moment. But there you go.
Yeah. Well, global level, I would say. Okay, then 23. This should be known as the absorption in yoga that liberates from all contact with suffering. That is undoubtedly the yoga system that must be practiced without deviation. Without deviation and also without getting discouraged. Anirvinna, not depressed. Because of course it's not easy. We need to practice. Okay, we need to continue, even if we're not perfect. 24. Completely abandoning all the desires or plans, reason from the mental processes. One should control the mind and all the senses by regulating them from every side. Sankalpa prabhavan kaman tyaktva. Sarvam aseshata. Aseshata means also unlimited. Not only completely abandoning, but also abandoning all the innumerable desires that arisen from the mental process. Manasa indriya graman viniyamya, regulating, controlling. Okay, one should control the mind and the senses by regulating them, not by abstaining from activities, not by repressing them or just, but regulating, controlling them. When you have a child, a small child, you don't try to keep the child always still without doing anything. You let the child eat and sleep and play, even run around, but you have to regulate, you have to control, you have to be aware of what the child is doing. Because otherwise the child will eat anything, and run around off a cliff, and get himself in real trouble because you're not watching. So the mind is like a child.
Yes.
Okay. 25. Gradually withdrawing from external things by the use of intelligence with a determined effort, one should fix the mind in the self, in the Atman, and stop worrying or thinking about everything else. So this is where we should keep our awareness, our consciousness, our focus. That doesn't mean that we don't have to be aware of what is happening around. Okay. We have to, become, become Mahatmas, not narrow-minded. Our mind should become wide enough to have a broad view of everything. Then the mind is unsteady and impatient to wander around. Every time, wherever it comes up, one should bring it back under control and regulate it so that it remains controlled in the self or by the self, in the Atma, Basam, controlled. Okay. Certainly, he is among the yogis who has perfectly pacified the mind, can attain the highest happiness. Thus, having attained the pacification of passion, he becomes situated on the transcendental existence and becomes totally purified. So when the mind is quiet and is doing its work properly, quietly, seriously, happily also, doesn't need to be sad, but it has to be serious, has to be actually controlled and engaged consciously. 28. Concentrating always on the Atman, or self, which is the same. The yogi who has become free from all contaminations attains the highest happiness because he easily remains in contact or connected with the Brahman. Brahma samsparsham, touches the Brahman, is in contact with the Brahman. Okay.
There is a question here, Mataji, and I think it's important because there's so much discussion on the term, what is the end point? Is it merging with the Brahman, in contact with the Brahman? Is it one with Brahman? Is it close to Brahman? There's all sorts of,
all of the
definitions.
All of the above. Yeah.
So what does that actually mean for
but if we don't understand what the Brahman is, it's difficult to try to understand our position in respect to the Brahman, because the Brahman is everywhere. Brahman is everything. It's just about the consciousness, being conscious. Aham Brahmasmi. You don't need to go in or out or, in contact or up and down, There is no up and down. There is no in or out. Everything is Brahman. I don't know. In material experience, we don't have that experience.
No, but someone, obviously, Mataji, the reason why I ask is that a lot of people going into this are very new to these concepts. That's why I raised it, if that makes sense.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's why, we need to understand what is the Atman, and then we can understand what the Brahman is. Because, as long as we identify with the material body, with the physical body, and the mind, we cannot understand the Brahman, because we are Brahman. Everything is Brahman. Brahman is Paramatma. Brahman is Bhagavan.
Yes.
Brahman is everything. Absolutely. Brahman is Vasudeva.
And that's the realization that everything is Brahman. Once you realize that, then exactly,
then you are in contact with the Brahman, you're connected, you're in the Brahman, you are Brahman.
Then these terms almost become semantics.
Exactly, yes.
Because
that's why I said all of the above.
Yes, absolutely. Please carry on.
Okay. 29. One who is connected through yoga contemplates the Atman that is situated in all living entities, also in all states of existence. And all the living entities, existences, are situated in the Atman. Therefore, he is equally disposed towards everyone and everything. So, Bhuta means being in both senses, means individual entity and also state of being, situation. Because the Bhuta is the existence itself. So the being is existence, and the situation, the circumstance, the reality is also existence. You understand? This is important, because otherwise we tend to become dualistic here, to see multiple beings, but in fact there is one being only. The existence with the capital E.
Yes.
Okay. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me never loses sight on me and is never lost for me. Yeah. Yeah. That's the idea.
Yes.
Vasudeva Sarvamiti. The yogi who worships me as the one who resides in all existences, is situated in me. Wherever he may go, he always remains in me. Yeah, like omnipresent. Yeah. So, this is the explanation of what Brahman is. O Arjuna, one who sees everything, everyone, as non-different from oneself, both in joy and in sorrow, is, in my opinion, the greatest yogi. Because we are all one. So we are all awareness, we are all existence, we are all Sat Chit Ananda. There is no difference between, any being. But that is, again, at the ontological level, not as the functional level.
Yes, and people get the two confused.
Yeah, they get confused because they identify with the material body. So the material body, of course, will never be the same.
No, because when you say we are all one, the image of that is often modernity has made that into somebody
it's a
saying,
big blob.
Oh, the world is one. We are all one.
They
Let's
don't know
hold
what
hands.
they're talking about. Yeah.
You're talking at a consciousness level, not at a functional level, in essence.
No, the functional level is a material level. Material level, we can never be the same. Because the material body has a beginning and an end, a manifestation.
Yes.
So, can never be the same, because the space that your body occupies cannot be occupied by another physical body.
Yes.
So how can you be one? You can be in contact, you can unite, but you cannot be the same. So, that is the material level. So people who are identified with the material existence, they have some problems in understanding we are all one.
Yes.
But sometimes, people who are more sincere, more, pure in their consciousness, they see the unity. Like, for example, they see the unity in nature. They understand that if they poison the environment, they're poisoning themselves. So they feel the energy, the prana everywhere, as exactly as in themselves. But that is still a material level. It's still the prana. The connection is there because we are all parts of the same biosphere, of the same planet, of the same universe.
Yes, you mentioned hydrosphere, actually, with the water.
Hydrosphere, yes. But we are all one at a much deeper level, at the spiritual level, because we are all Brahman. But, that being one is different, it's not exactly the same. Okay, we'll see how it goes. We need to realize that. Okay. Okay. Okay, then Arjuna is starting to have some doubt about, how can I do this? So verse 33, Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, I do not see how it is possible to consistently perform this yoga that you have now described to me as in equanimity, because the mind is restless. Equanimity means balance, because, being detached in that sense. The mind is restless. O Krishna, the mind is indeed restless, turbulent, powerful, and stubborn. I think that controlling it would be more difficult than controlling the wind. Yeah. Yep. And Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, O mighty Arjuna, certainly the mind is restless and very difficult to manage. but it can be controlled by practice and detachment. Abhyasena and vairagyena.
And
Abhyasa
interesting that
and vairagya.
Krishna mentions two key concepts: practice and detachment. He highlights them both of it.
Yeah. Because if you practice but are not detached, you're going to get anxious. You know, and being anxious about being anxious is not the solution.
And this is something that afflicts many a so-called quote-unquote meditator.
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't have the proper knowledge. You know, they go and say, oh, I'm meditating. Yeah, okay. Yeah, good luck. They don't have the proper knowledge. They don't know how it works.
Absolutely. Very interesting that he mentioned those two words there. Please carry on.
36. My opinion is that it is very difficult to attain yoga when the self is not engaged. But there are appropriate means by which, with a little effort, one will be able to control the self, the mind. Mind, you know, the self is the sense of identity, you know, control the self, control the mind. So it's difficult, you know, but we need to control the mind, engage the mind. Arjuna said, oh Krishna, let's say that someone has faithfully embraced yoga, but due to insufficient renunciation or effort, he is led astray by the mind and fails to attain the complete perfection of yoga. What destination will he achieve? He said, okay, if I cannot do it, I will here. I wonder whether he will not perish like a scattered cloud, since he has abandoned both pursuits, meaning ritual activity and engagement in sannyasa yoga, and remain without a position, instead confused on the path of transcendence. So what are we supposed to do? Oh Krishna, please, you should dispel these doubts completely for me, because I cannot find anyone else but you who can remove uncertainty. And the Lord said, O Partha, he will never be lost in this world or in the next life. One who is engaged in beneficial activities will never meet with a bad end. So this is very reassuring and encouraging and comforting, because we are going to make mistakes, of course. We are going to be imperfect. We are going to have difficulties. But yeah, it's okay. You know, this world, that, you know, this life, next life, it's okay. You know, and then he says, after attaining the planets of those who are virtuous and residing there for many years, one who has fallen from yoga takes birth in the house of people who are pure and prosperous. Suchinam Shimatam Gehe. So, you know, at least we get some punya. And then, after getting the proper punya, we can even take birth in a family of wise yogis. Certainly such a birth is extremely rare in this world. And then, after taking birth, there in such births, he recovers the realization from his previous lifetime and again resumes his efforts toward full perfection. So
progress is never lost. Progress is never lost.
Exactly. Whatever he has attained in previous life will certainly create a spontaneous attraction toward perfection, because the seeker of yoga even transcends the regulations of the scriptures, because he has already realized them. Okay, so the rules and regulations are meant for people to develop the consciousness, to learn. Okay. Engaging in a serious practice, such a yogi becomes purified from all contaminations and attains the supreme goal, a perfection that requires many lifetimes. So, the yogi is superior to the ascetic, to the tapasvi. And is considered also greater than a scholar, jnani, yogi, jnani bhyo, and greater than those who perform ritualistic activities. Therefore, Arjuna, you should be a yogi. And among all yogis, one who worships me with faith and full concentration is considered by me as the greatest yogi. And this is the end of the chapter. Yogi nama api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana. Antaratmana. Yeah.
So Mataji, I would like to, that verse that you've mentioned is often discussed so much. The yogi greater, the yogi, the ascetic, and the scholar. To finish this particular section off, could you please talk about it? Because just anecdotally, this is discussed so much in Vaishnava circles. What is Krishna meaning by this? And it's because people haven't grasped asceticism, the term.
Yeah.
So would you mind explaining this very important verse, please?
Okay, the actual yogi is someone who is constantly conscious of the Atman, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavad. So whatever this yogi does is yoga. That's why all the chapters of Gita are not karma but karma yoga, not jnana but jnana yoga, not dhyana but dhyana yoga, not sannyasa but sannyasa yoga. Because the essence of all activities for a realized soul is the yoga, is the realization. So if someone is just practicing austerities, tapasya, but he doesn't have the realization of the Atman Brahman, that's not sufficient. A scholar, a jnani who is, very learned and he studies a lot, but doesn't have this awareness, this consciousness of the Atman Brahman is not sufficient. In fact, when Krishna will say, Bahunam Janmanamante, Jnanamam Mam Prapadyate, after many lifetimes, a jnani, a real jnani, actually attains me, because the knowledge is not sufficient per se. The knowledge must take us to actual realization. And what is the realization? Realization is the Atman Brahman. And the karmi, those who engage in ritualistic activities, ritualistic duties. Yeah, the rituals are meant to help us develop this consciousness of Atman Brahman. So without that consciousness, it's not, that's not sufficient. Of course, it's good practice. All of these things are good practice. They can help, but they're not sufficient in themselves.
And Mataji, that is wonderful because you've explained the difference, because people sometimes get confused because they don't understand A, what a yogi is, and B, what an ascetic is. They know scholarship, they know, the typical academic, but they get confused between the yogi and the ascetic. Yeah, so then they confuse this verse, isn't it?
Yeah, and they mistakenly conclude that one should not make any effort, one should reject knowledge, and one should reject performing one's duties. But that's not what Krishna is saying.
Krishna, the yogi, applies asceticism and knowledge in the correct manner, leading to Atman Brahman realization, rather than seeing asceticism and knowledge as endpoints in their own right.
Exactly. They're not sufficient, but they're required. Jnana and Vairagya are required. And that's why Krishna gives such a glorification about knowledge, about jnana. That doesn't mean that one should reject knowledge or reject tapas or reject the karma means the karma kanda. That's not what it means. The karma are the duties, right? So why Krishna keeps saying, telling Arjuna that he has to perform his duty? So that would be a contradiction. But if we reconcile this by understanding that the yogi is someone who puts the yoga into everything, and the connection, everything he does is in connection to the Supreme. Yat karoshi yadasnasi yad juhosi tadasi yat. Whatever we do, doesn't matter. Tapas, jnana, karma, whatever. Yagya, cooking, eating, anything and everything. Okay.
So Mataji, to round off, and I think the reason why I mentioned this, because I think this is this is again a watershed moment in chapter 6, because the knowledge, would it be reasonable to infer that the knowledge is the knowledge that everything is Brahman, we are Atman, and therefore, as a result of that, you see Atman in everybody. That's the key here. Ontologically, we are the same. Functionally, maybe not, but ontologically, we are the same. Secondly, Mataji, detachment is important. And then, with asceticism, regulation of food, sleep, all these things are key components in spiritual realization. It's the blending of all these together that then leads to yoga.
Not so much the blending, but using, like time by time, maybe we don't need to do them all together, but we need to control and engage everything with the proper consciousness, with the proper purpose. Okay.
And I think that comes across. That's why I feel this verse is so important, and that's why I kind of, ask you this in a bit more detail, if that makes sense, Mataji.
Yeah. What is the question exactly?
No, my question was, you've answered it very nicely.
Oh, okay.
Which is you explained in detail what he means, because I can tell you now, amongst discussions with friends and colleagues who are Vaishnavas, everyone gets stuck on this particular verse a lot. That's why I asked for the clarification.
Yeah. They get stuck on this point because they are still under the delusional duality. Because they think that if we do something, we cannot do something else.
Yes.
And which is not the fact. Because we can maintain the spiritual consciousness and engage all the activities, even the material activities, into spiritual consciousness. We see that. Krishna will explain it that again and again. Okay.
And it also solidifies what you said in previous discussions, where you said asceticism is simply giving up things so that you have more time to focus on Atman realization and Bhagavad. So as opposed to starving yourself for the sake of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Fasting doesn't mean that we have to punish the body to reject the material body. It means that we can focus more on the spiritual consciousness, and eating is also a big part of it. The Upanishads are explaining that. I think, there is one Upanishad that very clearly says that food is Brahman. And makes all the examples, makes a little story of all the senses that were fighting to, find out who is the most important and all the, objects of the senses, who is the most important. And then they found out that the food is the most important thing. Okay. We'll talk about that later, next time. Okay.
Mataji, it's been a wonderful discussion, and I think we've covered a lot of very important ground, and I think that leads us nicely to the next part of this beautiful chapter. So my obeisances and thanks to you, Mataji.
Jai Shriman Narayan, Jai Jagannath. Thanks to you.
Jai Shriman Narayan, Jai Jagannath. Thank you. Jai.